On the morning of my wedding day, the sun rose like it always did, careless and golden, as though it had no idea that my entire life was about to split open. I remember standing by the window in my little room, staring at my reflection while the makeup artist brushed blush across my cheeks, trying to paint happiness onto skin that felt numb. I was 28 years old, a woman who had always dreamed of walking down the aisle. But in that moment, I felt as though I were walking toward a funeral I hadn't chosen. My own. My name is Claire, and for as long as I can remember, love has always been my tender wound. I grew up in a house where silence was louder than screams. My parents loved each other, once I believed they did, but by the time I was old enough to understand what marriage meant, theirs was nothing more than two strangers coexisting under the same roof. My mother carried her bitterness like a second skin, and my father disappeared into work and late nights. I promised myself that when it was my turn, I would have something different, something real. But life has a cruel way of testing promises. The wedding dress that hung on me that morning felt both foreign and suffocating. My friends fluttered around me, snapping photos, laughing, toasting champagne. They thought I was nervous, the way all brides are nervous. They couldn't see the storm in my chest, the way my hands shook not with excitement, but with dread. For months, I had been pushing down doubts, telling myself that Daniel, my fiancé, was the safe choice, the right choice, the man who could give me stability after a lifetime of chaos. He was kind, dependable, respectful. He was everything my father wasn't. And yet, in the quiet corners of my heart, another name lived, a ghost I had never been able to bury. Michael. He had been my first everything, my first kiss, my first love, my first heartbreak. We met when I was just 18, in college, when the world still felt wide open. He was older by 2 years, with eyes that looked like they could swallow me whole, with a reckless smile that made me feel alive in a way nothing else did. He was my fire, my danger, my wild escape from a childhood where I felt invisible. But like fire, he burned me. Our love was too consuming, too fragile under the weight of the world. My mother hated him, called him a drifter, a boy with no future. And maybe she was right, because Michael disappeared one day without a word, leaving me shattered and abandoned. A shell of the girl I once was. It took me years to stitch myself back together. By the time I met Daniel, I was 24 and so desperate for something steady that I convinced myself stability was enough. I buried Michael in the graveyard of my memories, or so I thought. Until my wedding day, the ceremony was set in a beautiful old church in the countryside. Its white stone walls wrapped in ivy, its stained glass windows glowing with sunlight. Guests arrived dressed in pastel suits and flowing dresses, filling the pews with chatter and anticipation. I walked down the aisle with my father's hand awkwardly linked through mine, his face a mask of forced pride. My heart thudded like a warning drum in my chest. But I kept my eyes forward, toward the altar where Daniel stood. And then I froze, because standing just a few feet away, not as a guest, but as Daniel's best man, was Michael. Time fractured. The breath left my body in one sharp exhale, and for a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. My legs trembled so violently I nearly stumbled. Michael, the boy who had vanished, the man who had destroyed me. He stood there in a sharp black suit, older now, broader, but unmistakably him. His eyes lifted and met mine, and in that single second, the years collapsed, and I was 18 again. Fragile and desperate, staring at the boy I had once trusted with my whole soul. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the church was packed. Hundreds of eyes on me. Cameras flashing. Whispers echoing. My smile stayed fixed. My feet kept moving. But inside, I was breaking. When I reached the altar, Daniel took my hand, his face glowing with joy. He didn't see it, the quake inside me, the ghost from my past standing just inches away. But Michael saw. His eyes lingered on me, unreadable, burning, and I knew in that moment that nothing about this day would go the way I had planned. Throughout the ceremony, I could barely hear the priest's words. The vows blurred into static. I stole glances at Michael, who never once looked away. And then it hit me like a cruel twist of fate. The groom I was marrying was the brother of the man I had loved. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I didn't know. Daniel had never spoken of his estranged brother, and I had never connected the dots. Different last names, years apart, family tensions that had kept them distant. It was as if fate had been conspiring in silence, setting a trap I walked right into. As I stood there, the ring slipping onto my finger, memories of Michael flooded me. His laughter in the dorm hallways, his hands on my waist, the promises whispered in the dark, and the pain of waking up one morning to find him gone. And now, he was here, watching me pledge my life to his brother. Why had he come back? Why now? The reception was worse. The ballroom was strung with golden lights, the air thick with music and the scent of roses. Guests laughed, clinked glasses, danced. I smiled for photos, toasted champagne, cut the cake with Daniel, but every movement felt mechanical. My eyes searched for Michael, and every time I found him, he was already watching me. At one point, when Daniel was pulled away by relatives, I found myself cornered near the garden terrace. And then Michael was there. He looked older, harder, but the sound of his voice shattered me. "Claire," he said softly, and it was as though no time had passed at all. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to fall into his arms. Instead, I whispered, "Why are you here?" He smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm the best man. You didn't know." The cruelty of it almost made me laugh. "You knew," I hissed. "You knew it was me." He didn't deny it. His gaze darkened. "I knew, and I came anyway." My chest heaved. "After everything you did to me, why would you?" He leaned closer, his words a knife against my skin. "Because some truths don't stay buried, Claire. Not forever." And just like that, he was gone, slipping back into the crowd, leaving me gasping for air, my whole world spinning. The rest of the night blurred. Daniel was oblivious, his arms warm around me as he kissed my cheek and introduced me as his wife. Guests danced and laughed, but my mind was trapped in a loop of memories and questions. Michael's presence was a wound torn open again, bleeding into the life I thought I had built. That night, lying beside Daniel in the bridal suite, his steady breathing against my neck, I stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of 1,000 unshed tears pressing on my chest. I thought about my mother's warnings all those years ago, about how Michael would ruin me. Maybe she was right. Maybe he always would. But I also knew something deeper, something more terrifying. This story wasn't over. And in the days that followed, I would discover just how dangerous family secrets could be. Because Michael hadn't just come back to haunt me, he had come back to destroy everything. The morning after the wedding, I woke up feeling like I had swallowed a storm. Daniel lay beside me, peaceful, his arm draped across my waist as though nothing in the world could touch him. He had no idea that while he slept, my heart was fighting a war he couldn't see. The sunlight streamed in through the hotel curtains, illuminating the white roses scattered on the bedside table. And for a moment, I wanted so badly to freeze time to pretend I was simply a new bride, safe and loved. But reality has sharp edges, and the memory of Michael's eyes slicing into me the day before would not fade. I slipped out of bed quietly and wandered onto the balcony, the morning air cool against my skin. My reflection stared back at me in the sliding glass door, a woman in a silk nightgown, 28 years old, married, yet still tethered to a past she had never outrun. My chest tightened as I thought of Michael's words. Some truths don't stay buried. What truths? What had he meant? Over breakfast, Daniel was radiant, already talking about honeymoon plans, about starting a family. I nodded, smiled, agreed, but my thoughts were elsewhere, circling Michael like a moth to a flame. I hated myself for it. I hated that after everything. One look from him could still shatter me. The days that followed were a blur of polite family gatherings and phone calls from friends congratulating us. Everyone saw us as the perfect couple, glowing and new. But beneath that glossy surface, I was unraveling. Michael lingered like a shadow. At first, I tried to avoid him, but our families were now connected, and there was no escaping. He was there at dinners, at toasts, slipping into conversations with that same unreadable stare. One evening, when Daniel was caught up in business calls, I found myself alone in the garden behind his parents' estate. The air smelled of jasmine, and the world was quiet, until I heard footsteps behind me. My heart knew before I turned. Michael? He leaned against the stone wall, his hands in his pockets, watching me. He looked older now, hardened by something I couldn't name. But his presence still lit every nerve in my body on fire. You shouldn't be here, I whispered, though I didn't move. I have every right, he said. This is my family's house too. I clenched my fists. You walked away from me. Michael, you disappeared and left me broken. And now you stand here like none of it mattered. His jaw tightened. And for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, pain, regret, maybe even guilt. You think I wanted to leave. You think it was my choice. The words hit me like a blow. My throat tightened. What do you mean? He hesitated, then shook his head. Not here. Not now. But Claire? What you think you know isn't the truth. Before I could press him, voices called from inside, and just like that, he was gone again. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me. My mind spiraling. What did Michael mean? Why had he vanished all those years ago? The ache in my chest grew heavier, fed by memories I had spent years trying to bury, nights spent crying into my pillow, mornings where I could barely get out of bed, the way his absence had hollowed me out. And now, he wanted me to believe there was more to the story. I wanted to hate him, but instead, I found myself desperate for answers. Weeks passed, and I kept my distance, though every time Michael entered a room, my pulse betrayed me. The tension grew unbearable, until one evening, when Daniel had left for a business trip, I found a note slipped under the door of our house. "Meet me, midnight, the old train station." My hands trembled as I read it. I knew I should throw it away, ignore it, protect the fragile world I had built with Daniel. But my curiosity was stronger than my fear. And so, under the cover of night, I found myself driving through empty streets, my heart pounding louder than the engine. The station was abandoned, its walls cracked, the windows covered in dust and graffiti. My heels clicked against the floor as I stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of rust and decay. And then he appeared from the shadows, his presence overwhelming. "You came," he said softly. I crossed my arms, trying to steel myself. "Tell me why. Michael, why did you leave me? Why come back now?" He exhaled, as though the weight of years sat heavy on his chest. "I left because I was forced to. Your mother, she made me." The air rushed from my lungs. "My mother," he nodded. "She came to me, said if I loved you, I'd walk away. She told me things about your family, about mine. Things I didn't want to believe, but they were true. Claire, your mother hated me because of who my father was. She said she'd destroy both of us if I didn't disappear. I thought I was protecting you." My knees wavered, and I gripped the railing behind me. "You're lying." "I wish I was," he said, his voice breaking. "Claire, I'm not just Daniel's brother. There's more. Something your family has kept from you. Something about your father." The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. I shook my head, refusing to let his words in, but deep down, something told me he wasn't lying. The venom in my mother's hatred of him, the years of secrets in my family's house, they all began to blur into a horrifying possibility. I staggered back, my voice trembling. I can't do this." Michael reached out, his fingers brushing my arm, and the touch sent lightning through me. "Claire, listen to me. You were never meant to marry Daniel. None of this was meant to happen. The truth, it will destroy everything." I tore away from him, tears blurring my vision. Then why tell me now? Why not let me live my life in peace? His eyes darkened. "Because peace built on lies will always collapse, and I can't let you be swallowed by it." I ran from him that night, my chest burning, my mind a whirlwind of fear and denial. I wanted to believe he was lying, that he was simply trying to sabotage my marriage. But in my heart, I knew Michael wasn't that cruel. He carried his own scars, his own truth. When I returned home, I sat in the dark living room until dawn, replaying every word, every memory, every warning my mother had ever given me. And for the first time, I realized that my family, the family I thought I knew, was a house of secrets. But nothing could prepare me for the truth I was about to uncover. The day after that midnight meeting, I couldn't look at my mother the same way. Her voice, her every gesture, carried a shadow I had never noticed before. Growing up, I always thought her bitterness was aimed at my father's late nights, his distance, his neglect. But now, Michael's words clung to me like a curse. She forced me to leave. I visited her that afternoon, telling Daniel I needed time with my mom. When I entered the familiar house of my childhood, the air felt heavier than it used to, as if the walls themselves were complicit in her silence. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping her tea, her sharp eyes narrowing the moment she saw me. "You look pale," she said flatly, as though diagnosing an illness. "Mom," I began, my voice shaking. "I need to ask you something. Did you threaten Michael all those years ago?" The teacup froze in her hand. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw it fear. Then she recovered, placing the cup down with a deliberate clink. "You're still thinking about him," she said coldly. "Even now, married to Daniel." "That's not an answer." Her lips thinned, and she looked away, toward the window where the garden bloomed. "Michael was never good for you. He would have ruined your life. I did what any mother would do." The world tilted. "So you admit it? You drove him away." Her eyes snapped back to mine, sharp as knives. "Yes, and I'd do it again." My heart cracked open. "Why, Mom? Why him? Why hate him so much?" Her silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Because his father isn't just his father." I leaned forward, my stomach turning. "What do you mean?" She pressed her lips together, then shook her head. "Leave it alone, Claire. You're married now. That's your life. Digging into the past will only destroy you." Her refusal was worse than any confession. I left the house shaking, my mother's words echoing in my skull. Because his father isn't just his father. That night, I lay awake beside Daniel again, staring at him in the dark, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He was innocent, wasn't he? He didn't know any of this? Or did he? The questions burned me alive. In the days that followed, Michael seemed to haunt me everywhere. At family dinners, he sat across the table, watching me with those same eyes that had once held all my dreams. At gatherings, I felt his presence behind me, a ghost tethered to my every step. And each time, I wanted to demand answers, but fear sealed my mouth shut. Until the night I broke, Daniel had been away on another business trip, and I found myself wandering again this time to Michael's small apartment across town. I didn't plan it. My car seemed to drive itself. When he opened the door, surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by a sorrowful smile. "You came?" I stepped inside without a word. His apartment was simple, sparse, nothing like the lavish homes Daniel and I frequented. The air smelled faintly of whiskey and old books. I turned to him, my chest heaving. "Tell me the truth. Michael, all of it." He hesitated, then gestured for me to sit. I remained standing, My arms crossed like armor. My father, he said finally, his voice low, isn't the man who raised me. The man who raised me was already gone when I was a child. My real father is someone else. And your mother? She knew him. The blood drained from my face. What are you saying? Michael's eyes locked onto mine, filled with anguish. Claire, my real father is your father. The words detonated inside me. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. No. No. That's not possible. It is, he whispered. That's why your mother hated me. That's why she forced me to leave you. Because she knew we shared the same blood. My stomach churned, bile rising in my throat. You're lying. You're trying to. I'm not lying. Claire. His voice cracked, desperate. I didn't want to believe it either, but I found letters. Old letters. From your mother to my mother. They confirmed it. And that's why I left. Because I couldn't. Because we couldn't. Tears blurred my vision. My world. Everything I thought I knew about love, about family, was shattering. So you knew all these years, and you let me stand here, fall in love with you, give you everything I didn't know then. He said fiercely, I only learned the truth after I left. That's why I stayed away. That's why I let you hate me. Because it was better than letting you know the truth. My sob broke free, raw and jagged. And now you show up on my wedding day. You stand there watching me marry your brother, knowing what we were, what we are. His face crumpled. Because the truth was going to come out anyway. And you deserve to hear it from me, not from whispers or lies. You deserve the truth, even if it destroys you. I collapsed onto the chair, my body shaking, my heart tearing itself apart. My love, my first love, my greatest wound was also my brother. The cruelty of it was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to tear down the walls, to claw my way out of my own skin. And yet, beneath the horror, one question burned brighter than all the others. Did Daniel know? If he did, then my entire marriage, my entire life, was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. I stumbled out of Michael's apartment that night, my chest hollow, the streets spinning around me. My phone buzzed with missed calls from Daniel, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. How could I lie beside him knowing what I knew? How could I look at him and not wonder if he was part of this web of secrets? The days that followed were torture. I avoided both brothers, drowning myself in silence, my mother's cryptic warnings replaying in my head. But the truth gnawed at me, demanding confrontation. Finally, one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat across from Daniel at our dining table, the food untouched, my hands trembling. Daniel, I whispered, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. He frowned, concern clouding his face. Of course. What is it? I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. Did you know about Michael? About who his real father is?" For a moment, his expression froze, and in that flicker, I had my answer. My world collapsed all over again. Daniel's silence was louder than any confession. His fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate, and he rubbed his temples like a man already defeated. My heart sank. That flicker of hesitation. The way he couldn't meet my eyes, he knew. He had always known. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please, tell me the truth. Did you know Michael is my brother?" He lifted his gaze then, his eyes glassy, torn between guilt and love. "Claire, I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to know." My breath caught in my throat. Protect me or control me. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of wood against tile splitting the air. You knew. You knew who he was. You knew what we had, and you let me marry you anyway. Daniel stood, his hands outstretched, pleading. "It wasn't like that. I thought if I kept you away from him, if I gave you the life he never could, then maybe you'd never have to feel that pain again." Pain. My laugh cracked like glass. "Daniel, you let me walk down the aisle with you, while the ghost of my first love, my brother, stood there as your best man. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" His face twisted, raw with regret. "I thought time would heal you. I thought love would heal you. My love." The room spun around me. I wanted to scream, to shatter every lie that had ever been told to me. Instead, I crumpled onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. Years of grief, confusion, betrayal, it all came crashing down. Daniel knelt in front of me, his voice breaking. "Claire, I married you because I love you, not to deceive you. I was terrified you'd find out and leave me." I lifted my face, my tears staining my skin. "Then why bring him back? Why have Michael stand there on our wedding day? Was that your idea or his?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "He insisted. He said if I didn't let him be there, he'd tell you everything himself." So that was it. Michael had forced his way back into my life, holding the truth like a weapon. And Daniel, too weak to stop it, had allowed the fuse to be lit. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel's shallow breathing beside me, feeling like a stranger in my own bed. My mind replayed everything: Michael's confession, my mother's venom, Daniel's guilt. Every piece of my life suddenly felt tainted, rewritten by secrets I was never meant to discover. The next morning, I drove without thinking, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I ended up at the cemetery, the one where my grandmother was buried. She had been the only person who ever truly saw me, who ever told me I was enough. I sat by her grave and spoke into the silence. "Grandma, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what's real, what's love, what's a lie. All I know is that the people I trusted most have betrayed me, and I don't know how to forgive them." The wind rustled the trees, carrying no answers. Later that week, everything exploded. It happened at a family dinner, the kind meant to showcase unity and tradition. My parents, Daniel's parents, Michael, and me all gathered around a table heavy with food none of us wanted. The tension was thick, every smile brittle. Halfway through the meal, Michael put down his glass and looked straight at my mother. "How long do you plan to keep lying?" Her hand froze mid-reach. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, his voice steady but sharp. "Tell her. Tell Claire the truth." The table fell silent. My father's fork clattered to the plate, his face paling. My mother's lips tightened into a line. "This isn't the time." "It's long past time," Michael snapped. "She deserves to know." My pulse roared in my ears. "Tell me what I demanded." My mother's eyes darted to my father, then to me. "Claire, your father isn't the man you think he is." The room seemed to tilt, my stomach lurching. "What are you talking about?" Her hands shook as she placed her napkin on the table. "Years ago, before you were born, I had an affair. Your father knows. He's known all along. And Michael, he's the result of that affair." The words struck like lightning. My world split apart. My father dropped his gaze. Shame etched into every line of his face. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice was hard, defiant. "You and Michael share the same blood," she said. "That's why I kept you apart. That's why I begged him to leave." I felt the air leave my lungs, my body hollowing out. Betrayal stacked upon betrayal. My parents' marriage, my childhood, my love, my wedding, it was all a facade built on secrets and silence. I stood, my chair crashing to the floor, my voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me, to us?" Tears spilled down my face as I turned to Michael. His jaw clenched, his eyes filled with sorrow. For years, we had been victims of a truth buried too deep. Daniel tried to reach for me, his voice trembling. "Claire, please." I pulled away, my body shaking. Don't touch me. You knew. You all knew. And you let me walk into this nightmare blind." The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. And in that silence, I realized something my life as I knew it was over. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. In the days that followed, I drifted through my existence like a ghost. I couldn't return to Daniel. Not yet. I couldn't face my parents. And Michael God. Michael, he was both my wound and the only one who understood it. One evening, he found me sitting by the river, staring at the water. He sat beside me without a word. His presence both comfort and torment. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low. "I'm sorry for everything. For leaving. For staying away. For being the truth that ruined you." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "You didn't ruin me, Michael. They did. All of them. With their lies. Their secrets. We were just collateral damage." He exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "What are you going to do now?" I stared at the water, my reflection fractured by ripples. "I don't know. All I know is I can't go back. Not to Daniel. Not to them. Not to who I used to be. The sun dipped below the horizon, the sky burning red, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my future pressing down on me, not as something to endure, but as something I would have to choose. And I knew that choice would break everything. But maybe it was time for everything to break, because only from ashes can something new be born. That night, as the darkness swallowed the last of the light, I understood my revenge wouldn't be loud or violent or dramatic. My revenge would be truth itself, the one thing they had all feared the most. And I was ready to set it free, like a wound torn open. My story bleeds into yours now. If you've stayed with me this far, let me ask you, what would you do? Standing in my place, would you destroy them with the truth or protect yourself with silence? Sometimes the hardest revenge is simply surviving. If this story touched your heart, please share it so others can hear. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I want to know if you would have chosen differently. And if you want to walk with me through more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.